Hello guys, welcome to today's live analysis session. So we'll just wait for about 1 to 2 more minutes for more people to join us and we will get the session started. At the same time, I also have my Q&A as well as chat box open, right? So if you guys have any questions, please put your response under the questions chat. So for today, we will be doing our live analysis. So for this, we will be taking a look at trade setups. I'll be taking a look at mainly euro dollar. But if you guys have any other requests, please do put them under the tab and we will take a look at them together. Okay, let's kickstart today's session, right? So for today, for those of you guys who are just here with us, we are doing our live analysis session. So as always, if you guys have any questions with regards to the charts or any analysis you want us to take a look at, do put them under the questions chat. You can either put it under the chat box or the Q&A. Okay, so just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Lee Sing. I provide FX advisory to institutional clients. I'm also part of the team that's recognized by the Technical Analyst Awards as finalists for the Best FX Research for 4 consecutive years. If you guys are watching this with us live right now, and if you have any questions, do put them under the questions chat. If not, right, feel free to put them on, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn with regards to the content presented on Wednesdays, Thursdays, as well as Fridays. So before we get the session started, right, just a quick disclaimer. The information presented here is not to be treated as investment advice, it's for educational purposes only. So this is the agenda that we will be covering for today. We will first cover the key economic events. So for this, we will hop onto the economic calendar. We will be looking at the key events that are released, right, and what are the currencies that will be impacted from this. And then moving forward, we will be covering on the trade setups and review. So for this week, right, we don't really have, we didn't make a call last week in terms of the trade setups. So there isn't much review that we can do this week. So what we will be doing is just mainly covering the setups and also using supply demand zones concept, whatever we've covered in price action trading masterclass at the end of November, right? So we will be using those concepts to see how we can apply them onto euro dollar, as well as potential setups that we are looking at. So that's on the trade review, right? And then of course throughout the session we'll open the floor to Q&A. So if you guys have any questions or any charts you want us to look at, do put them under the chat and we will take a look at them. Okay, so before I hop onto the trade setups, let's first cover the economic calendar. So for economic calendar, let me just bring out my browser here. So before we go on to the charts. So for economic calendar, what you can do is that you can go to vantagemarkets.com. And then under education and tools, economic calendar. So this is the tab. So essentially, this will show you all the key events that are happening, or rather all the events that are happening. So for today, you can see that mainly on the events themselves, we have the euro, the CAD, as well as the important one would be US non-farm payroll data. So this, it's basically jobs data. It's a reflection of the labor market, right? The state of labor market in the US economy. And this happens on the first Friday of every month. So you can see that we're in December now. So first Friday of every month. So we have US non-farm payroll data. Yeah, so mainly for today, right, it's pretty quiet day, mainly on the CAD as well as the dollar for the higher impact news. So in terms of how do we tell whether it's a high impact news, you can take a look at the colors here. So the ones that are in white, excuse me, are the ones that are in white are the ones that have low impact. The ones in yellow are the ones with medium impact, and the ones in red are the ones with the highest impact. Okay, so yeah, so now that we have covered on the economic we've covered on the economic calendar, let's hop on to our charts. So for our charts, the main ones that I want to cover for today would be on euro dollar as well as dollar index. So let's take a look at that. So maybe for a start, let's take a look at dollar index first to see if there are any key levels that prices are currently testing. So you can see on dollar index over here, right? So currently prices are holding on this demand area that we have. And we highlighted this demand area. So let me just remove all of this and let's do a fresh analysis. So you can see from where it is currently, this area on the higher time frame, the monthly, you can see that prices tested this resistance area here, or this zone, right? So when you stretch it across, you can see that this is the resistance area. We have this resistance area turn support level here as well, where price came in, tested it multiple times with the sharp rejection, and then a clear break above this region. And currently, this is the support region on the monthly time frame. If we go on to the weekly time frame, you can see that this demand area that price came and held within, we see the first time it actually came in, tested this region, and then failed this region here, right? So you saw how price wick below this demand area. So this now becomes a demand supply region. So when demand fails, right? So the concept that we have covered in price action trading masterclass, when demand fails, it creates supply and vice versa. So you can see this example, right? When demand fails, supply is created. So I want to highlight this region, but this time you can see that this area itself, this candle, right? You can see this candle still held within the zone before the failure. So this is now the supply region on the weekly. So I'll label this as the weekly. What it also shows us is that we could see more downside pressure coming into this region, right? So we could see a pullback and then further push down into this area here. So this is on the daily. So on the daily time frame, you can see what happened. So price essentially came, tested this region. It also tested a resistance area. You can see this zone if I were to stretch it across this area. So essentially price came in, you saw significant reaction of the zone before it pushed higher and then broke and closed below this region, this breakout confirmation below this key support level. And then we tested this region as a resistance. This is also the weekly resistance area that we have, right? So any pullback into this region, we could see more downside. So let me just remove the retracement levels, right? So this is the first resistance area. And the next one that we have, it's the one above, which is this area. Essentially, you can again see that price came into this region. It tested this region before we saw a sharp break and close below the level. So this is the two resistance zone that we have on the weekly and daily time frame. And once we have identified that, right, we can go down to the 4 hours time frame. So what you can see over here in terms of market structure on the 4 hours, let me just zoom in. You can see over here, right? Essentially, prices are still forming your lower lows and lower highs. So you can see price pushing to form lower lows and lower highs. And it also broke below the last low that we have, which shows that any pullback into this area. So this is the last leg of the move, right? So what this shows us is that any pullback into this zone itself, we could see price pull back and then continue on the downside. So this is on the 4 hours time frame. What's also important to note is that today it's Friday and also investors are watching for US non-farm payroll data, right? So we have to be slightly more careful because when there are data releases, right, what this could also mean is that you can see huge spikes, right, or short-term spikes that we have over here. So yeah, just in terms of looking at the key levels, these are the current key levels that we have. So looking at the resistance zone here and the support area here. Okay, so this is on a 4 hours time frame. Right now on the smaller picture, you can see on the 4 hours, you can see clear bearish market structure with lower lows and lower highs being formed. So this is the last high that took out the low. And within this area itself, you can see that it's also the weekly resistance area. How so? Because on the weekly time frame, price wick below the demand zone. You can see this area here. This candle, you can see that price came in and it swept below this demand area. It swept below the low of this area, this wick here, this region. So when demand fails, it creates supply, and you can see that this is the candle that's still held within the demand area. So this is the demand area, or this was the demand area before we see that push down, right? So you can see if I were to extend this, you can see that this was the demand. Price reacted to the demand and then failed it. So you see it very clearly with this interaction here. So we have demand and then price reacting to this demand area before that failure. Okay, so this is one, right? Okay, I have a question, right, by Chong. Would you consider 200 MA just below current level? Thus, there's a higher chance that DXY will do a short-term pullback before continuing to move past 200 moving average. Okay, let's take a look at the 200 moving average. So I'll just load the moving average. Okay, so in this case, right, which time frame are you looking at? Are you looking at the daily or the weekly? Because it shows very different pictures on the different time frame. If we are on the daily time frame, you can see that there's a clear break below the 200 days moving average. And also, I think that because prices are holding below this resistance area, so any pullback into this resistance area, we could see more downside. So of course, we have to wait for the confirmation on the smaller picture, right? As always, the smaller time frames. But if you're on the weekly time frame, you can see that there's still some move to the downside before price reaches this area. But before price reaches this 200-day moving average, right? I mean 200 MA. In this case, it's probably going to be the 200 days moving average. So I reckon it's probably going to be the daily time frame we're referring to. But let's say if we're on the weekly time frame, then this 200 MA itself, right? Because there's still more downside before it reaches this level. It's the same thing, right? So this is the support area. So even before price reaches the support area, we will have to get past this demand zone that we have here first. And this demand zone, it's found on the monthly time frame with this clear resistance and support level. So yeah, just something to keep in mind, but I would say that most probably we're looking at a 200 days moving average. So in this case, right, then yeah, this pullback that we're seeing over here, I think it's possible that we see this pullback if it continues to the downside. It's a break below this level, right? So the 200 moving average can also act as a dynamic support. So essentially, right, so this is the area and it's also holding below the resistance zone. So I think what you're saying could be very possible, Chong. Okay, so this is one in terms of looking at indicators, right? And then also something else we can check, right, as always, when we're using our retracement levels. You can see here, right, so the most direct move is this push down. So we can check the retracement using this high and this low. But of course, when price forms a new lower low, we will have to adjust the retracement accordingly. So when you take a Fibonacci retracement of the move starting from the high and ending at the low, you can see that this move itself, the 38.2% or even the 23.2% as well. Let me just remove all these levels because they are not relevant anymore. But the idea is that you can see here, right, essentially this 23.6%. So this is the resistance area. And this is also within the weekly resistance. So let me again remove this, right? So we saw the interaction between demand and supply. You saw how price reacted to the demand area and then failed it here. And when it fails, it creates a supply region. Okay, so for me, this is the area on the daily. You can see this region. This is the daily. So if you want to narrow it down even further, this is basically the daily time frame. So it's the same idea, right? So as price comes into this region, when it enters into this area here, right, this is what we could see, right? So this resistance area that we have here. Okay, we have EMA 50, right? Let's take a look at EMA 50. So let me just change this. Okay, let me delete the 200 days moving average on the weekly time frame. Okay, so currently prices are sitting right on the 50 days moving average. Right, you can see that it's currently testing this level. In terms of how this level serves as a dynamic support, you can see here, right? This one was pretty good. It sits very neatly on this region itself before we saw this false breakout, right? So price broke below and then pushed up much higher. You see this testing as a resistance and then the support region again. Currently it's sitting on this area. Yes, I think it's possible, right? When prices are sitting on this region. One thing that's interesting to note on the weekly time frame as well is that you can see this area, this region again, right? So when I look at demand supply areas, if I take a look at it from specific candles, what I would like to see is that prices are still holding within the wick of the previous candle. So you can see this is an example where price held within the wick of it before we see that break above. The reason why this is an interesting zone to watch is because if you zoom down to the smaller time frame, right? So focus on the same circle, red circle area that we have. If you go down to the 4 hours time frame, for example, you can see that this is actually an area of consolidation, right? So price, you see this movement essentially, right? So essentially this pennant that's being formed here, or symmetrical triangle, right? So price converged before we saw a clear breakout and then price continued to the upside. This is a continuation pattern. So before that, you can see that there's a parallel uptrend, right? So prices forming higher lows and higher highs, and you see this consolidation before price continues higher. So in this case, right, this is what we see on the smaller time frame. But if you take a look at it on the weekly, essentially, right, what it shows is that there is this candle that's still held within the zone or held within the wicks before that break. So this is the demand region over here. So yes, I think it's definitely possible we see that pullback, right, to test this resistance zone again, because it's sitting on the 50 days EMA, that's one, right? And also it's currently sitting on this demand area. So again, right, when price, if we do want to see a pullback, essentially, if we want to check if this demand area will hold, right? So let's take a look at this. But I would say that a big part of it will be news driven because of non-farm payroll data today, right? And also Fed recently, Fed Chair Jerome Powell mentioned that they are taking a look at moderating the pace of rate hikes. So essentially, this could take effect as early as December, which is this month's FOMC meeting. So markets are currently pricing in 50 basis point hike, right? But after the comment itself, you can see that dollar actually weakened here. Okay, so it's strong push down. And then let's take a look at this. So this is actually the weekly demand area, as you can see, right? So if price enters into the weekly demand region, you can see that right now, at least on the daily time frame, on the 4 hours, it's still showing you bearish market structure. So there isn't any signs of reversal yet, because if you take a look at just the most recent market structure, you can see a clear break. So what we want to wait for, ideally, right? So a pullback into this resistance area or this supply zone. Again, you want to make sure that on the smaller time frame, you're seeing the reversal that we need to play the drop. Over here, we can target the low, right? Price might not break below this low. So we need to wait for clear structure to be formed, essentially. And then a break of the last high. I think that will signal a sign of more upside. But as of now, if you take a look at it on the daily, the weekly, even the 4 hours, it's still showing you bearish market structure with respect to the most recent prices. Okay, so yeah, I think a pullback into this supply zone is possible coming into this region. If a new structure is formed, a new low is formed over here, same thing, right? When price comes into demand area, we want to check if this is going to be a reversal on the smaller time frame, right? If there's no reversal, what this shows you is that this high itself, it fails to form a new lower low, because if the downtrend is to continue, right, we're in the downtrend here. So if the downtrend is to continue, what it should show, it's again, price should be forming new lower lows and lower highs. So yeah, so this is an interesting level to watch on euro dollar, right? You can see that dollar itself, dollar index is sitting on the weekly demand area, this demand zone that we have. It's also sitting on the 50 EMA, this area here, right? But if you're on the 4 hours time frame, you can see in terms of structure, there is no low that's being formed yet to show us that this low is a potential target, or if this low could break the last structure. So none of this has been formed yet. So we can see how price develop here. And also with respect to non-farm payroll data, right, how it will impact dollar index. So this is on dollar index, right? There's another one that I want to take a look at, and this is actually on euro dollar. So euro dollar is sitting on an interesting level as well. So let me just remove all of this and we can take a look at that, right? So you can see on the higher time frame, first on the monthly, it's in a bearish market structure. You see clear lower lows and lower highs being formed, right? If I have to mark out supply demand areas, it's the same thing. You can see this region, so essentially the same idea. If I take a look at the wicks, you can see that the candles itself, price still held within the wick before that failure. So this is the supply region. So I want to mark this out as the supply. This is on the monthly time frame. So even though prices are testing supply on the monthly region, right, we don't know how deep a pullback this can be. It could push deeper into this area here, right, before that push down. So which is why it's important to note smaller time frame reversal, because that smaller time frame will then tell us that prices are going to continue on the downside, or it is respecting this monthly supply region, because price could always continue to come and test the next supply region that we have. Okay, so this is why we need confirmation on the smaller time frame. So this is on the monthly time frame. If you go on to the weekly time frame, you can see that this region, right? So again, if I have to narrow it down, you can see that currently prices are testing this area here. So if I were to narrow it down here, you can see again, right, this candle. Actually, it will be more precise to take this, because you can see again how price held within the wick of this region and then failed it right after. And the candle that still held within is this candle. So this is the candle. So again, this is on the weekly time frame. So you can see that on both time frames, prices are coming into a resistance area here. But again, right, how do we confirm that this is indeed going to hold and prices could continue to the downside? We need to wait for smaller time frame confirmation. So in this case, right, we need to wait for the smaller time frames. In terms of the weekly demand, you can see that this is the weekly demand, the nearest one that we have, right? So this is the demand region. So I just want to mark this out first. And we will leave the rest later, right? So we have the weekly demand, weekly supply. Currently, prices are in a supply region, right? It's holding below this moving average, even though I would not consider this, right? Given how prices are reacting here, I would say that this moving average, it can be used as a confirmation, but I will not take it, I will not determine a buyer solely based off the moving average, because if you tailor or you move across different time frames, you can see that it gives you very different signals. On the weekly, you can see that there is a clear break above this moving average, right? But then if you go on to the monthly time frame, you can see this region, right? Prices are still holding below. So for me, right, this moving average itself, it will be a interesting indicator to look at, but it won't be one to confirm the bias. Okay, so I'll just cover this for now, right? Hide this indicator for now. And let's take a look at this area here. So currently we're in the daily supply region. Now, in this region itself, you can see, right, in this example, there's very clear higher lows and higher highs being formed. You can see the structure here, right? So if you're to mark out the highs and lows, you can see that you have higher lows and higher highs that are being formed here. If you take a look at it in close, you see this as well. So if you mark out the lows and highs, right? So what this tells me on the daily, it's still in a bullish market structure. This is important because we want to make sure that if we are seeing a reversal, if prices are respecting the weekly or the daily supply region, we need a clear break and change in structure, a clear break of the low to tell me that on the smaller time frame, prices are starting to reverse and is in line with my higher time frames order flow. So this is extremely important. We don't really get to see this on the daily, right? You see that right now, in terms of the highs and lows, price just broke the last high that we have, which is this region. You can see that break above the high. So what this tells me is that as long as price holds within this low on the 4 hours time frame, for me, right, this area itself, this region here, this is still bullish. Okay, so this is the 4 hours demand area. So just something to keep in mind. So if you go into the 4 hours time frame, you can see that clear break in structure, right? And then price just continued higher. So nothing much on the 4 hours. It's pretty much the same thing. You have this demand area. Take the extreme of this move, you can see that this is the demand area, basically the last candle that still fuel that move up. So yeah, so this is on this is euro dollar on the 4 hours time frame. Now, if I take a look at where prices are right now, you can see that this region itself, price broke above this area on the 4 hours, right? What we have over here within this area itself. So this is interesting. Within the consolidation over here, so there are two ways we can approach this. One is, of course, prices could continue the higher lows and higher highs. And the second one is that prices within this region itself, right? If we see this consolidation here, we could be seeing that pullback into the demand area that we're seeing. So in this case, right, what you want to look for, so focus on this portion of the chart, right? So again, you see that there's supply fails, creating demand. You can see here. So there's supply, you can see maybe on a smaller time frame, we can take a look at this. So you can see that this highs, right? So in an uptrend, the highs are weak, they're constantly being taken out, and you see it over here. So every new high that's formed fails to hold its resistance. So again, back onto the 4 hours, so you have this, right? So essentially this is the supply. Price broke above it, creates a demand. So this is the demand region. And what's interesting to note is that what this tells us here. So let me just put this in a different color. Okay, so this is the 4 hours demand region. What it also shows me is that if this 4 hours demand area fails over here, right? So if 4 hours demand starts failing, we could be seeing a deeper pullback within this whole leg. Understand that this is still bullish because it caused a break in structure, but within it itself, right, if price were to pull back, the first sign of it pulling back is the failure of this demand region. This demand area over here, right? How did we find this demand? It's because of how price interact. You can see that price broke above the supply. Again, when supply fails, it creates demand, right? You see this. So when supply fails, it creates demand, hence this area here. So you can see that right now it's still holding above the demand region, right? Nothing much change over here, not on the 4 hours, not on the 1 hour. So it's pretty much the same thing, right? You can see that prices are forming subsequent higher highs. Okay, so this is one region. This is also where I'll be labeling as my downside confirmation, which means that when price breaks below this region, right, we could be seeing a bigger drop. But of course, I do want to highlight that today we're seeing non-farm payroll data. So it could be driven by fundamentals or news itself more than just technicals. Okay, so this is currently the demand region. As you can see this on the 4 hours, you can see this on the 1 hour, pretty much the same thing, right? So this area over here, right? So this is the demand. So on the break of this region, you can see that the next demand zone that we have, if you go on to, let's say, the 1 hour time frame, you can see this is the consolidation. This consolidation over here. Right, so this is the demand region that we can watch on the 1 hour. Okay, so if we do see a break below, right, this is the next support region that we can play the drop to. Understanding that higher time frame is still more bullish until the 4 hour structure, which is basically this low, it's taken out. Okay, so this will just be a short-term move, right, if any. Okay, so this is on euro dollar, right? Let's take a look at, this reminds me, I think we have, do we have a view on this? I think yesterday we did a view on pound dollar. Okay, I can't find the chart anymore, but no, we did a view on pound dollar yesterday. I mean not yesterday, but a few days before. I believe it was somewhere here, right, on pound dollar. So again, prices were also on the resistance area, but they're still sitting on this demand area here. So you can see that this was the downside confirmation. Price didn't actually break below this region. It just tapped it, wicked it, but there wasn't a breakout confirmation in terms of a break and close below. So this didn't happen, and then it just continued further into the upside. It's still sitting on this supply region, as you can see, but you can see that even on the smaller time frame, right, you can see very clear bullish market structure in terms of the higher highs and higher lows that are being formed. So this area. Okay, so same thing, right? Anywhere, as long as price still holds above this high itself, it's still bullish market structure. The price could always continue, right? It could not hold this this resistance area there could be a case where this resistance area would not hold. I got all my words jumbled up, so sorry for that. Yeah. So this is just something to keep a lookout for. Okay, so yeah, I think the main one for today would be on euro dollar. So waiting for that downside confirmation. And also if there are any other setups, right? So this would be the one on euro dollar. For any other setups, today the main ones that we are seeing movement in terms of data will be on dollar, right? Because of non-farm payroll data. Yeah, the rest should be, I think it'll be as it is. Yep, so this is the view on euro dollar, right? I see that we have no other questions as well, right? So you guys have no other charts that you want us to look at? Okay, so if we have no other charts that we're looking at, right? So this pretty much concludes today's session. So as always, right, if you guys want to take a look at the the schedule for our webinars, right, please go to vantagemarkets.com/webinars. You will be able to see the speaker as well as the topics that are being covered. If you have any questions with regards to our account, right, please reach out to support@vantagemarkets.com. Okay, so with that, we have come to the end of the session, right? Thanks everyone. Stay safe, trade safe, and take care.